Boozhoo, anin, hindi no'y maganadok. Kaagegaabaw indigenous, mekanak indudem, mekanak wajuwing and dunjaba, Beishogakabakong and Danungom, Apajigo Miigwech Bizindauye. And what I said there was a traditional Ojibwe protocol greeting. I said, hello, all of my relatives. My name is Kaagegaabaw. I'm Turtle Clan. I'm a descendant of Turtle Mountain. I live close to Minneapolis today. And I wanted to begin by saying, Pajigo Miigwech Bizindauye. Thank you all so much for tuning in and listening to this conversation with James Kaagegaabaw. I love doing these. For over 6 years, I did a live Ojibwe Word of the Day on Thursday nights. And now to have an opportunity to kind of continue in that tradition with conversations with James Kaagegaabaw on Friday afternoons with you all, I'm incredibly grateful to do that. That's a great way for me to begin my weekend. And you may note that I am not in my usual recording studio. I am, again, on the road. This time I'm in London, Ontario. And I'm about to speak at the Caldwell First Nation Language Conference. So I'm looking forward to that. I haven't seen my friends in person from Caldwell for a year, so this is very exciting for me. But I still wanted to take a few moments and speak to you all about a word that I love so much. And this word is miigwech. Miigwech. Next week, when we see each other again, I suppose Thanksgiving here in the United States will have already taken place. And I'm often asked, and maybe if you're an Indigenous person as well, what do you say when you're asked about Thanksgiving? I've been asked by a number of people, by major magazines, by broadcasters, by journalists, and my answer has changed over the years. And one of the reasons it has is it's come from my understanding of that word, miigwech. Now, when we use it in a modern, contemporary setting, when we say miigwech, we're saying thank you. Thank you. When we use a word like miigwech wendamoen, we are saying gratitude. And when we say Thanksgiving, that day is miigwech gijigad. And I learned that in my very first year of studying Ojibwe. I was the annoying guy who asked all of the questions like, well, how do you say Thanksgiving in Ojibwe? How do you say this in Ojibwe? How do you say that in Ojibwe? And my Ojibwe teacher had the most insightful answer. He answered me, Meywensha, and Daso Gijik, Miigwechwe Gijigat. A long time ago, every day was Thanksgiving. Every day we gave thanks. And that was such an insightful look into traditional culture and spirituality of the Anishinaabe. And I think it's one that if we looked at it today, it would really help us gain insight to our relationships with Indigenous people, as well as perhaps shed some insight in our lives, how we can give thanks. So that word, miigwech, its history, I think it's brilliant. It's very fascinating. It is a newer word. It most likely comes from the fur trade era. And when you look it up in the dictionary, the first part, me, translates to it is thus, or that, and gwech is like sufficient, like enough. So if you can imagine at the end of a bartering session, trading furs for various goods, those could be akekug, kettles, wapuwayan, blankets, woolen blankets, manudu manensan, little spirit berries, beads, glass beads. When they reached the end of the transaction, they would say miigwech, miigwech. Now, if you come from an Indo-European speaking background, that could be French, English, or Spanish, at the end of a transaction, you would often say, thank you, thank you. But in Ojibwe, what they were saying was, That's all. That's it. That's all I'm going to trade for right now. And then the transaction would end. So this will become incorporated into the language. Really, they're just saying, I'm not going to trade anymore. That's enough. That's all. And this will eventually become thank you. The interesting part about this, there may not have been a word for thank you pre-contact, but that doesn't mean there wasn't gratitude. Gratitude that was expressed on a daily basis. I think they will incorporate this word into our vocabulary, knowing that we'll need a word like thank you if we're going to have a continued relationship with English speakers, with French speakers, and Spanish speakers. It's in their culture, and we can meet them partway, and it's no problem at all for us to express gratitude, to express thanks on a daily basis. But when I asked myself, what kind of culture does not have a word for thank you? And I've seen this with a number of indigenous cultures, not just here on North America, but all over the world. For me, a culture that doesn't have a word for thank you is a spiritually mature culture. This is a culture that really knows how to love. And when I look at the pre-contact evidence for like daily gratitude, it comes out in a word, in a simple word sentence. Minogijigad. Minogijigad. It is a good day. And one of the things I learned also in first year Ojibwe was no matter what the weather is like, if it's windy, if it's raining, if it's cold, if it's sunny, if it's hot, you can always say, if you are asked, what is the weather like? What is the day like? You can always say, Minogijigad. It is a good day. And, of course, I learned that and used that in a grammar test. But when I learned the spiritual and philosophical implications of that answer, it really expanded my worldview. What they're saying is, when you don't get what you want, often you can become maybe crabby or pouty about it. And when you think about it, like if it's raining and you wanted to go fishing, if it's very windy and you wanted to go to the baseball game, if there is a blizzard and you wanted to travel to visit family and friends and you say, well, it's a bad day, it's bad weather. It's not the weather, it's you not getting what you want. And the moment you can get past those hang-ups, that baggage you're carrying around, that moment you're not having your desires immediately gratified and it's upsetting your mental state, you're ceding your emotional sovereignty to these outside events, rather than seeing that, today is inherently good, no matter what the weather is like. For me, this was the ultimate expression of gratitude. These were people who woke up upon saying it is a good day, and when they were offering their asema, they were offering their tobacco, they were in a meditative state, in a state of thanksgiving, and literally thanking Gimishomasanan, our grandfather, the sun, Miigwech, thank you for shining on me. Thanking Gokumisanan, the spirit who dwells in the center of the earth, for the air we're breathing, for the water we will drink. What a remarkable way of expressing thanks on a daily basis. Knowing that in a planet filled with millions and then billions of people, there would be hundreds of thousands of people who would not wake up this morning to see the sun, to have a drink of water, to have a moment to express thanksgiving. And for them, just that opportunity to do it was a moment of gratitude. You didn't need a word for that. You lived with it on a daily basis. Gratitude, giving thanks. And so from that point, I had recognized, I think like a Buddhist teaching, where when the Buddha, he doesn't like reach this certain level where it's nirvana. He realizes that it was always nirvana. It was always perfect. It was always a good day. It was his way of looking at the world. That was askew. That was causing him problems. That was causing him suffering. When he was able to look properly, look correctly, see the world for what it really was, his opinion became, well, this is inherently good. This is inherently beautiful. And that kind of perspective brings with it gratitude. Gratitude for life, for Bamatsuan. So for me, when I look at that word gratitude, it has in it miigwech, again, thank you, and aindom, to think. So when we say he or she is grateful, I am grateful, we're saying they have thanks on their mind. They're thinking of giving thanks. And when I think of Thanksgiving, this is it's reminiscent of a long, at times dark and very complicated relationship with indigenous people and the people who would come here and ultimately settle and colonize Mikanako-Minising, Turtle Island. And this is not just one occasion, but it is one out of many where indigenous people helped the people who have come here and who will ultimately end up colonizing and settling Mikanako-Minising. And when I'm asked about, well, what do you think of a holiday like that, Thanksgiving? Well, initially, I don't have a problem with it. Like every day, I really should be giving thanks. If I want to hold on to the traditional, spiritual, philosophical, and way of living that was here before people arrived here, I should be able to give thanks for the food I'm eating. I should be able to give thanks for the people I'm seeing. And I should ultimately be able to give thanks again for the sun, for shining on me, for breathing air, for drinking water, for being alive yet another day. And, I'll be asked sometimes too, well, why did our ancestors help those people out? Again, this was not just during Thanksgiving. For hundreds of years after that, the people who, again, would ultimately end up colonizing and settling Mikanako-Minising would find themselves in a place where they did not know how to live with the land and how to make and how to survive there. They desperately needed the help of indigenous people. And for me, why did they help them? Well, there wasn't even a question. Many North American indigenous people will go through a ceremony called the Gi'ugoshamoan, the vision quest. They will fast for a dream. They will go without food and water, sometimes for 1 day, sometimes for 4 days, and I've heard of accounts of 8 to 10 days. When they go without food, they go without water, they're in isolation. And when you go without food, when you go without water, when you're isolated from your relatives, you realize something very important. Once you've negated all of those relationships, what happens to a human being without food, water, clothing, or shelter? You will die. You will die without those basic core human needs being met. And for the rest of your life, if you meet someone who doesn't have those human needs being met, those basic human needs, you will feel a real and genuine, authentic empathy for them. You will be able to say, I too have faced cold, hunger, thirst, and loneliness. And if I can, I will help you alleviate those. Why did they help them? Because it was embedded in their spirituality. It was embedded in their culture. This is how you should treat your fellow relative. And they were relatives. When you're on a vision quest like that, you realize I have a relationship to the animals. I have a relationship to the trees. I have a relationship to the earth, to the mushkiki, to the medicines. to the strength of the earth. When I need to be healed, when I need to be nourished, I seek out the strength of the earth. I seek out mushkiki. I seek out medicine. And the Nabi, the water, is giving life to all of it, unconditionally. You realize I have a relationship to each one of those beings. And it's that relationship that makes them relatives. This is how I'll treat my relatives. So again, it wasn't even a question. Should we help them? It was something that you do. This is how I should treat my relatives. So there is that aspect. That's also what I think of when I'm asked about Thanksgiving. And in closing, I think that if I have lost that ability to express thanks, to be grateful on a daily basis, if I have lost the ability to see every day as a good day, if I am unable to treat all of my relatives, again, with gratitude, with care, with respect, if I have lost the ability to be grateful for the opportunity to lead a good life, a life with Debwewen, with truth, with Gwaikwadizun, with virtue, with righteousness, with honesty, a holistic life, where my words are in alignment with my actions, a life with Zagi Itduin, with that compassionate, unconditional love, with Dabasain Dizuin, with humility, where I'm not exalting myself above my relatives, where I'm not saying I'm more important than all of my relatives. I am saying I am all of my relatives. With Menaji Itduin, with respect, acknowledging the sacredness and the sanctity of my relatives' lives. With Zungida Ewen, with strength of heart, with bravery, with courage, and acting with Nabwakawin, with wisdom, with intelligence. Then I have ultimately been colonized if I am not able to express gratitude that way, if I have lost that ability. And that is something I am absolutely unwilling to do. So as by the time we see each other next week, it will have been Miigwechwe Gijigat. It will be Thanksgiving, but a pleasant reminder that from some perspectives, many indigenous perspectives, in Dasogijik, Miigwechwe Gijigat, every day is Thanksgiving. Every day is an opportunity to be grateful. And with that gratitude, it will help you lead a life of joy. It will be good for your health. And I think it's a key component to leading Minobumatsuin, a good life, a life of peace, a life of balance, a life without conflict with your relatives and your ecosystem, a life without contradiction, where you're saying one thing and doing another, a holistic life, a holy life. And I want to take a moment and say, thank you all so much for listening. I love every opportunity I have to take a few moments and speak about language, the culture, the history, and the spirituality, and that you've taken a few moments to listen. I want to take a moment and say, thank you all so much for listening. Incredibly grateful for your time. And I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. I can take a few questions if you'd like. Now that we are online. Absolutely wonderful. Would you have a question? We can take one more. On Bliss Mankato, if you have a chance to check out this, what is my take on Thanksgiving? Should Native Americans celebrate it? I think that was the focus of this talk. If you have a chance to hear it, I think you might get some insights from how I feel about it, and just taking a moment to share them with people. Oh, well, Miigwech Bizendawiek, thank you all so much for listening. Again, people from all over the world. Bootlegs, I'll answer this one really quickly. Mikanako menacing. Mikanako menacing. Turtle Island. And on that note, have a great weekend. Miigwech Bizendawiek, thank you for listening. Banama Minawa Otis Abundamangigo Bundaman. And the spirit shall decide when we see each other again. Miigwech.